So when do you think this was going to happen? If you were to give me a timeline of events you think are going to occur, what timeline do you think you're operating under? I guess one of the factors here is that Trump only has, 3 years left in power. So, he's presumably going to leave power at some point soon. So if you're Iran, you might just want to play it out and hope that there's a different leadership in place by 2030?
The political leadership in Iran believe that they can wait Trump out. So they're waiting for the midterms because they believe that in November, the Democrats will win the midterms and then they will impeach Trump and basically constrain his capacity to fight wars. And worst case scenario, Trump will be gone in 2028, as you point out. There are certain problems with this. The first major problem is the national defense strategy, which we looked at previously. The national defense strategy, it is a long-term strategic framework for how America can control the world. And so one possibility is that Trump is just creating enough chaos for America to transition. When the Democrats come to power, if they come to power, they will institutionalize this strategy. And we know this as a possibility because in Trump's first term, he changed America's strategy around the world. And then when Biden came into power, he then institutionalized the strategy via China, right? So it was Trump who launched this terror war against China, and then Biden comes in power and institutionalizes it, right? So I think World War III, it's a much more long-term war of attrition. And I don't think that this war will end anytime soon.
You've made a series of new predictions. You've made 8 new predictions. Okay. I have them in this box here.
Okay.
I'll let you reveal what those predictions are.
Okay. This is one prediction. Okay. Okay. So this is the most controversial prediction. Okay. I predict that there will be a U.S. Civil War and Trump will get a 3rd term.
You think Trump will get a 3rd term? Yes. Isn't that constitutionally illegal?
There are things that are unconventional and immoral and wrong and evil and dangerous. And there are certain things that are illegal. Trump getting a 3rd term is not illegal. So let me explain the loophole. What Trump could do is this, okay? There are 2 possibilities. The first possibility is in 2028, he has his son, Don Jr., run as the president, and he runs as the vice president. And then when Don Jr. wins, if he wins, then Don Jr. could abdicate and Trump would be the president. And in the Constitution, if you read the Constitution very carefully, it doesn't actually prohibit people from doing that. It's not been done in the past. And no sane person with any morality would do this. But that doesn't stop Trump from doing this, okay? That's one possibility. Another possibility is that by 2028, America is at war with everyone. There's a national draft. The president now has emergency war powers. And so he can actually suspend the Constitution and delay the election, which is what Zelensky did in Ukraine. So these are 2 different possibilities. But I think that given Trump's track record, given his personality, I think he very much wants a 3rd term. And I think that he will do everything possible to get a 3rd term.
He would turn 83 years old in the same year that he finishes his 2nd term.
This is a man who eats McDonald's hamburgers every day. He doesn't really work out. Yet, on the campaign trail, he's able to go to 2 rallies a day. And in each rally, just 50,000 people. And he will talk on and on and on. Then at night, when he should be sleeping, he's either on Truth Social, tweeting about the world, or he's calling out reporters and telling him or her some confidential information that he really shouldn't be discussing with the media. This is a man who is addicted to attention. This is a man who loves the spotlight. He's lived all his life in the spotlight. For him, death is to be ignored. So given his personality, he would rather die in office than live peacefully somewhere else.
And of those two strategies that you named, where he puts his son in and then becomes president that way, or there's a war breaks out, so he says he has to stay in office. Of those two strategies, which one do you think he's more likely to deploy?
I actually think that given his narcissism, he would prefer the first strategy.
His putting his son in.
Because that shows himself in the world that America loves him.
Okay. And it could also be JD Vance or someone else, right? It doesn't have to be his son necessarily.
Trump does not trust anyone. Trump has never had a protege. In fact, everyone that's really worked for Trump has been kind of screwed over by him.
Do you not think that if his son decided to run and then announced that the vice president was his dad, do you not think that there would be such a huge backlash in the United States that his son wouldn't win?
Well, I think there's a possibility that they figure out how to cheat in 2028.
Right? Oh, as in actually cheat at the election?
Right. So
at the poll booth.
Right. So let's go into Trump's mind. All right. His psychology. In his mind, he won in 2020. The people voted for him. But the Democrats stole the election with mail-in ballot and by rigging the election machines. Okay. In his mind, he literally believes that. So in his mind, he believes that this is actually his third term, and the people and the government, they owe him a second term, which is what he wants now. He wants compensation for having the election stolen from him in 2020.
I find it really, really implausible to think that Trump would run for a third term.
So again, this is a prediction.
Yeah.
And it is a test of the validity of my theoretical framework.
I was looking at some of the constitutions and the laws, and it says that the 22nd Amendment explicitly states no person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice. Some theorists have tried to argue that since the amendment says elected, a person might be able to serve a third term if they were appointed to succeed to the role.
Exactly.
If they were appointed or succeeded to the role, e.g. by being vice president first. Legal scholars and the Judicial Committee almost universally reject this. The 12th Amendment requires that anyone serving as vice president must be eligible to be president. Since a two-term president is ineligible to be elected again, they are legally barred from being vice president.
So the point is, there's nothing explicit in the Constitution that bars someone from having a third term. Mm-hmm. And there's debate in the legal community about the spirit of the 22nd Amendment.
It would go to the Supreme Court, right?
And the Supreme Court is controlled right now by the conservatives. Trump appointed 3 of the 9 justices, and there's a possibility he gets a 4th later in the year. So it's entirely up to the Supreme Court whether or not he can run. And again, there's something explicit in the Constitution that forbids him from running as a vice president.
Okay. What's your next prediction?
My second prediction is there will be a grand bargain between the United States and China.
What does that mean?
It means that people expect that the United States and China will go to war at some point over Taiwan. It means a lot of people expect that China wants to challenge American hegemony and replace America as the global superpower. But China does not want to do that. China's probably happy with America being the world's hegemon because you have to invest so much of your resources into fighting these wars that bankrupt your nation. China doesn't want to fight these wars. So what China is going to do is try to triangulate between Russia and the United States. This is what happened during the Cold War. When China was not actually on the side of the Soviet Union, China was part of the non-aligned community. And that's what China is going to strive for in World War III, where China may help out Iran, may provide financing for Russia, but it's also going to strike deals with the United States as well. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think that Trump and President Xi are supposed to meet at least 3 times, possibly 4 times this year, only this year. The first will be in mid-May in Beijing. And I think that they will start a process in which China and America come to an arrangement that benefits both economically. What does America want? America wants China to continue to buy US treasuries in order to finance the American debt. What does China want? China wants energy, resources from the Western Hemisphere, and it wants to access the American market. Mm-hmm. So there's no reason why China and America cannot come to an arrangement that benefits both. And Trump is very much a transactional character.
And what will that mean for the world?
It means that China is not really part of World War III in a meaningful way.
Okay, so they're going to do a deal. They'll continue to work together as friends.
China will be friends with both Russia and the United States as Russia and the United States fight each other.
Okay. What's your next prediction?
Iran is another forever war, and the United States will institute a national draft.
Iran is another forever war, and the United States will institute a national draft. So you think Iran as a war is going to tumble on for decades, and that the US are going to draft people, which means you're obliged to go and fight.
Exactly. Okay. So the logic is this. America doesn't really care if Iran is a fighter or not. That's not really part of the American grand strategy. Iran right now, it's a perfect pretext for America to expand outwards and establish maritime choke points around the world and to force the world to buy American energy. So this war in Iran benefits America tremendously. So why not have it go on for a long, long time? In order to make sure this war goes on for a long time, you need ground troops. And you need a lot of ground troops. And that's why you need a national draft.
So what would a national draft look like in the United States? Everyone between the age of 18 and 25 has to sign up to the army.
Right. So most people don't appreciate this, but America has always had a draft. But for the longest time, it didn't really care whether or not you actually signed up for the draft. And starting in December, participation in the draft will be automatic, meaning that if you're between 18 and 24 in America and you're male, you'll be automatically put into the draft system.
From when?
I think from December.
This year?
Yes, that is correct, yes.
So between the age of 18 and 25, you think, and what does that really mean? Well, I've not really experienced that in my lifetime. So it means that if you're between the age of 18 and 24, either gender?
No, male.
Male, then you have to sign up for the army.
No, you already put into a draft.
Oh, you're already, okay, but you might be called upon.
That's right. It's a lottery system.
Okay.
Right. And this created a lot of backlash during the Vietnam era. And so they sort of toned it down. But starting in December, they just passed a law that says that starting in December, you will be automatically registered for.
They've passed a law.
Yes, they have. Well, in theory, Congress first needs to declare war.
Okay, fine.
Right? That's the first step. And Congress has not actually declared war yet.
Okay. So you think there'll be a draft, and you think this war in Iran is going to trickle on for
a long time.
How long? 10, 20 years, like Afghanistan? Or
I don't see it stopping.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's next in your prediction box?
Okay, this is pretty bad. The world will move towards an AI surveillance state.
I feel like that's already happening.
I think it's pretty obvious. Yeah.
What does that mean in reality for the average person? Because, we're seeing some of these big companies like OpenAI and Anthropic all sort of signing up to government military surveillance projects. What does that mean for the average person?
Right. So for the average person, it means two things. It means digital ID and digital currency.
Okay.
So what that will allow is for the government to basically monitor everything you do online and control all financial transactions. It can basically program your bank account. So like you can't buy cigarettes or you can't buy drugs. And this will allow the government to basically categorize everyone and put everyone into a certain database to monitor that person. And once you're able to categorize everyone, you are able to use AI to predict their behavior.
Isn't this what goes on in some parts of the world?
This is what goes on in China. And that's how I know about this.
How does it work in China?
Well, in China, we all have digital ID. If you want to access anything in China, you need your digital ID. So if you want to open a bank account, you have to use a digital ID. If you want to use any e-payments, you have to use digital ID. If you want to use a phone, you have to use digital ID. Okay, so everyone's part of this national database. And then what this allows government to do is basically monitor everything you do. Because basically, depending on how you buy things, I can then extrapolate to figure out your behavior. And then I can figure out your thinking, right? And then I can create incentives in order to guide and control your behavior.
So in China, can they see everything that you do?
Yes, they can.
Messages you send,
everything,
payments you make,
everything. Everything you do online is being recorded and it's being inputted into the database to figure out who you are, what you want, and how to control you. And they think this is progress, by the way. This is progress because I'm making you a better person, right? I'm helping you achieve your dream. I'm helping you lose weight. I'm helping you avoid drugs. I'm helping you work harder.
Won't you be in trouble if you talk against this system?
Well, me personally. Okay. So I operate in a gray area where I do not interact with the Chinese internet. So everything I do is in English. It's meant for consumption in the Western world. And I don't talk to Chinese reporters. I don't talk to Chinese social media. I have no Chinese media presence. And I am not at all influential in China. And I prefer that way because if I ever became famous in China, then they would obviously want to control me in order to better influence other people.
What's your next prediction?
Israel will achieve the Greater Israel Project.
So you think Israel are going to conquer the Middle East?
Israel has essentially already conquered the Middle East. The only force in their way right now is America. So once America leaves the Middle East, which I expect to happen, then Israel will absorb CENTCOM, which is the Central Command, the American military bases in the Middle East, and they will achieve the Greater Israel Project. There's no other power in the Middle East that can withstand the might and power of Israel.
And do you have a timeline for this?
The moment America quits this war against Iran, the moment that America leaves the Middle East, Israel will achieve the Greater Israel Project. And what's really interesting right now is that Israel is trying to drag this war out for as long as possible because they see this war as a way to destroy all its major enemies in the Middle East. You know, the Israelis have already said this. After Iran, Turkey is next. Turkey is next. This war is already destroying Saudi Arabia and the GCC, right? So the last opponent is Turkey. Once Turkey is brought into this war, then Israel will achieve the Greater Israel Project.
And the Greater Israel Project covers all of this region here from Turkey, Egypt, Yemen, Oman.
So the Greater Israel Project is like this, okay? So it goes from the Nile in Egypt to the Euphrates in Iraq. It covers part of Turkey, all of Syria, all of Lebanon, all of Jordan, and parts of Saudi Arabia, which also includes Mecca and Medina.
What is your next prediction?
NATO and Russia will fight for Odessa.
Odessa? What's Odessa?
Okay. So if you look at the Ukraine front lines, right now, Russia is preoccupied in trying to control the Donbass, which is basically eastern Ukraine. Why Russia is doing this is that eastern Ukraine has historically been part of Russia. Therefore, most people there speak Russian or are ethnically Russian. The Donbass is also the agricultural and industrial heartland of Ukraine. So if Russia were to control eastern Ukraine, it doesn't really need Western Ukraine. And then Western Ukraine would basically become a rump state. It'd be useless, right? So the last piece to this puzzle would be Odessa, which sits on the Black Sea. The reason why you want Odessa is that it's the major port. And once you control Odessa, you basically block off Ukraine from the Black Sea. You have complete control over the Black Sea.
The Black Sea, is that the Black Sea?
This is the Black Sea, and this is Odessa right here. Yes.
Okay, so you're saying that Russia will take Odessa?
That's correct.
Okay, so they'll control the Black Sea.
That's right. But NATO recognizes that if Odessa falls to the Russians, the war is over. And Russia will have achieved all its major strategic objectives.
Why is the war over?
Because Russia doesn't want to continue on after Odessa. It doesn't need
that's what
the
it
rest
wants.
of Ukraine.
What does it get from taking Odessa?
Once it takes Odessa, control of 1/3 of the world's carbohydrates. If Russia willed it, Africa would starve to death. The Middle East would starve.
Why?
Because Russia and Ukraine export a lot of grain to these places. These places are not food independent. They rely on fertilizer. They rely on food imports.
Okay. And Russia's using the Black Sea here to export.
Exactly.
Okay. What is your next prediction?
This is the last one. Please be good. Okay. I was hoping for an optimistic one, but East Asia breaks out into conflict.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Okay. So we've talked a lot about the Middle East, and we've talked briefly about Europe. Okay. So now let's go into East Asia. And I think there are 3 major sources of friction and conflict in East Asia, and these could be potentially major flashpoints. The first flashpoint is, of course, over Taiwan. Because China believes that Taiwan is part of its territory, and so it wants to take over Taiwan. Now, the problem with this is that recently Prime Minister Takahashi of Japan has said that Taiwan is core to Japanese strategic interests. And what she means by this is that Japan has no resources. It's a manufacturing power. It depends on resources from overseas. If China were to take over Taiwan, it can now block Japan from accessing the Strait of Malacca. And that's a possibility Japan cannot permit. So Japan would fight to ensure that Taiwan and China were never to unify.